So yeah, I actually watched Suicide Squad 2016 for this video, but I realized I had way too much to say about those two movies, so we'll save that for the next time. So as I mentioned before, I wrote my notes for this rewatch quite a while ago, and you are a fucking fool if you thought I was gonna rewatch this movie again.
So that's it? What, we some kind of Suicide Squad?
Before we get started into the actual movie itself, let's address the hellhole that was the post-production for this movie. So I made a video a while ago covering a version of the film script that was pretty different from what we ended up getting. And like I mentioned in that video, we don't know what version of the script that was. It could have been a really early draft with a bunch of placeholder lines, or it could have been the actual shooting script. I don't think we'll ever know. Whatever the case is, what remains true is that the very first teaser trailer released for this movie was a true emulation of what David Ayer's vision was for this film. Then the viral official trailer, the one with Bohemian Rhapsody in it, oh boy, that's when it all went to shit. So for the next 10 years, every trailer tried to do the pop song integration thing with the upbeat energy, killing off the whole trailer voiceover era.
This summer.
Listen, if you haven't seen either of those trailers in a while, they are both really great trailers technical-wise. Like if there was an award show for trailers every year, those two trailers probably would have been competing for first place. However, the Bohemian Rhapsody one landed such a good impression on the general audience, Warner Bros got scared. According to David Ayer, after the BVS reviews shell-shocked the leadership at the time and the success of Deadpool, my soulful drama was beaten into a comedy. It was also clear that Warner Bros wanted to stick to the tone of this trailer for the entire film, especially with their new demographic of audience who are like, Joker and Harley, a relationship gold. So this is what allegedly happened. Warner Bros asked the same trailer company to edit their own version of the film and tested it against David Ayer's version of the film, which had no needle drops and a linear timeline. So clearly there were going to be two different versions. But what wasn't so different between the two versions were the audience test scores. So Jeff Johns had to write reshoots, and that cost them an additional $22 million to film. $22 million. Do you know how many families you can feed with $22 million? And instead, it got funneled into this film? James Gunn has always been supportive of releasing this Ayer cut, and David Ayer has always been supportive of the Suicide Squad, so in case you're wondering, no, there's no bad blood between them. So as you can tell by the studio meddling, this was pretty much the beginning of the end for the DCEU. Third film of the franchise, by the way. So we start the film with intense music whiplash in the first 3 minutes. It's just needle drop after needle drop, and it is awful. We get introduced to characters with what will be soon known as a TikTok edit style. It's just so messy, and you can tell that this editing company put all the effort into the first 20 minutes of the movie before realizing that this style was not gonna be sustainable. Like these cute little graphics that pop up, they never return again. Maybe they ran out of money or something, I don't know. We get Ben Affleck Batman in this, and there's a bit where he comes down to get Deadshot, and he's like, I don't want to do this in front of your daughter. A bit too late for that, Batman. Let's keep that cycle for trauma to do with their parents repeating. Good job, Batman. Let's quickly talk about Cara Delevingne. She looks really young for this role, especially compared to Joel Kinnaman, who's meant to be her love interest. And she has a really beautiful model face, so it kind of just stands out in a way that's kind of jarring to me. But what's not jarring is that transformation scene in the Pentagon. I don't think anything as cool as that happens for the rest of the movie. What I also don't really get is why Enchantress looks so human, but her brother is like a big fuck dude made out of metal duct tape. Like, did she lose her size from all the exposition she had to spill? And of course, a classic trope from 2010's action movies, a big beam of light shooting into the sky. This was the first time I've ever seen this, am I right? I wrote in my notes that there's a weird shot of Rick Flag eating a chicken leg. So if I find that, I'll put it in here. So let me address Slipknot. If you were there before the release of this film, you would know that everyone just assumed that Slipknot was gonna die immediately. He was given the Taskmaster treatment, and you know what? For a guy that was introduced as a master of escaping, he was moving real fucking slow, so maybe he deserved to die. Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang. Really great. He throws like 4 boomerangs in this entire movie though, including one sponsored by Samsung, where the camera on the boomerang somehow stays still while it's, I don't know, it makes no sense. The whole concept of the Suicide Squad in this movie is flawed. So in this mission, we have the Suicide Squad and a bunch of soldiers who do most of the shooting anyway. I thought the point of sending in the Suicide Squad was because they're expendable, but you're gonna sacrifice good men from the Navy SEALs or whatever in this mission as well. Oh yeah, by the way, you know how this takes place after Batman v Superman? They're like, the world lost a hero. It's been 1.5 movies that we saw him in. Do you really expect us to believe that this whole world is mourning for Superman? And then they're like, what if Superman had turned evil? Who would we have sent in? We have big crocodile guy and a guy with guns. Honestly, at this point, I would expect this level of clownery from the United States government. I thought Will Smith as Deadshot was okay, but can someone explain to me why he didn't shoot Harley when he was ordered to? They make it as if Deadshot and Harley had this whole journey together and that's why Deadshot misses on purpose, but you've known this psycho murderer lady for like 20 minutes, maybe even less if you count how much time they actually talk to each other. By the way, in this scene, she's rescued by Joker. His voice sucks, his look sucks, the idea of some things are okay, but no, this Joker sucks. And I know I said this in my DCEU theories video, but this Joker would have been unironically better if this Joker was Joker number 2 and he was originally a Robin and the original Joker had already died. At least it would justify why Batman hasn't mutilated the shit out of his purple Lamborghini yet that isn't actually a Lamborghini. Like, you see the shit that Ben Affleck Batman has done and you expect me to believe that he wouldn't have killed the Joker within the first minute of meeting him? What? The same Joker, by the way, confirmed in this movie to have killed Robin, with Harley Quinn as an accomplice, so I don't know why Batman would even rescue her in the water. So after ditching the squad, then the helicopter crashing and everything, Harley just returns back to the gang and everyone's all good and chill. No consequences, no emotional journey or anything. This is the kind of shit that pisses me off with this movie. The bar scene, this is what the film needed more of. This is what James Gunn's version excelled at. Just a great fucking balance of emotional moments and action. Not sure why Katana joined them. We don't know shit about her. Isn't she meant to be working on the flag? And during the big build up to the final fight, we see her crying with the katana. I'm like, bro, why would we care about this character? We literally have spent 0 time with her. Oh, wait, sorry, my bad. We do know some things about her.
I would advise not getting killed by her. Her sword traps the souls of its victims.
So the final battle kinda sucks, and I actually don't mind that El Diablo dies, even though in the original version of the script he doesn't. Otherwise, the only casualties would be Slipknot and a bunch of soldiers that were pretty much included in this movie because Aya wanted this movie to be a military glaze fest as well for some reason. And the one line that always twisted my titties whenever I heard it was El Diablo when he says, "I lost one family, I ain't gonna lose another one."
I lost one family, I ain't gonna lose another one.
Is this new family in the room with us? It's just a fucking lazy Hail Mary throw in the dark moment, praying that the audience is gonna latch onto this emotional connection without doing any of the work. God damn it, a family. Literally. Then that's eventually followed by the longest slow-mo shot of all time. I swear to God, this could have been a Family Guy skit. Unless something goes terribly wrong in my life, I'm probably gonna cover James Gunn's The Suicide Squad eventually, so I'm not gonna dwell too much on comparisons in this video. But this movie, on rewatch, yeah, it was shit. Wow. But I didn't really have a bad time watching it. I know it's a terrible Frankenstein of 2 completely different visions for a single story. A DCEU classic, but I wasn't bored. If anything, it was nice to be reminded every 5 minutes as to why people hate this movie. Oh yeah, one last thing, apparently Warner Bros. Wanted Ryan Gosling to be Joker.
Better?
Finally, a DC movie with some color. Let me just start off by saying that this movie made $824 million worldwide back in 2017, and that's not even adjusted for inflation. For reference, Batman v Superman made $874 million. So apparently, the inclusion of Batman and Superman is worth only an extra 50 mil. Just imagine if that movie was good. So clearly Wonder Woman was considered a win for DC. But it's not all butterflies around here because the main criticism for this movie was how bad the final act is. And boy, is it apparent on the rewatch all these years later. Let me just quickly talk about Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She's fine in this movie. There are a few botchy moments of acting from her in this movie, but it wouldn't really have stuck in my mind if it wasn't for the hate boner that the internet has for her, which I'm not gonna get into. It also helps that Diana pretty much acts like a child in the first half of this movie, sometimes even dumber than a child, so I guess that helps blending in her performance. Okay, I don't know what the general consensus on this is, but I thought the chemistry between Gal Gadot and Chris Pine was great. It might be Chris Pine as Steve Trevor doing most of the heavy lifting, but either way, their relationship carries this whole movie. I know people like to compare this to Captain America: The First Avenger because, throwing a shield plus war, but to me, they're nothing alike. This might be a controversial opinion, but the Wonder Woman Steve Trevor stuff in this movie is better than the Steve Rogers Peggy Carter stuff in The First Avenger. And that's me after rewatching both of these recently. There's just something so pure about these Diana Steve moments. It doesn't feel manufactured at all. It just lets you sit in it. Ah, it's so good. The little squad also gets more development than the Howling Commandos. All the Themyscira stuff is also really gorgeous. Apparently they considered 47 countries before settling on the coast in southern Italy, and boy did it pay off. We also get a sick flashback to the Greek gods in an awesome art style where Ares is somehow able to kill all the gods by himself. Doesn't really make sense to me, but okay. Apparently Nicole Kidman was originally meant to play Queen Hippolyta, but she had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts, so we got Connie Nelson instead, who's pretty good in the role. And we also get to see Nicole Kidman as a different queen in the DCEU, so you know, it all worked out. But you know who's really great in this movie? Robin Wright, and we don't really see much of it because she gets killed pretty early on, but she's just badass. I know if you leave Themyscira, you can never return again, but it's weird that we never see this Wonder Woman reunite with this cast ever again. In fact, we didn't even see Queen Hippolyta at the end of the movie going like, Diana, you did it. You saved the world. Nope. Nothing like that, just never see any of them ever again. Anyway, great contrast between Themyscira and London. I mean, the color grading kind of beats you over the head with how desaturated and grey London is, so it's kind of hard to miss. The little downtime with Diana and Etta going shopping, it's just so nice, and you can see the inspiration from the Christopher Reeve Superman movie, whether in tone or literally. Alright, let's quickly talk about the pseudo bad guys. Danny Houston plays a German general named Erich Ludendorff, who's not a DC character, but was a real fucking guy. This blew my mind. Elena Anaya, or Elena Anaya, she plays Dr. Poison, and I know this film tries to paint her as this hideous outcast due to her scar and her mask or whatever, but she's still kind of beautiful. I do wish we explored her character more. We do get a hint of it when she's overlooked by Steve Trevor, which was a bit sad, adding more flames to the femcell fires. I think both of their best scenes, after they develop a gas that can break through masks, they gas a room full of generals, and Ludendorff chucks in one single mask for them to fight over, and Dr. Poison's like, that mask isn't gonna help them, why would you throw that in there? And Ludendorff is like, they don't know that, and they both let out a comically evil laugh. It's so funny.
But the mask won't help.
They don't know that.
One of the highlights from this movie though is the No Man's Land scene, and it's our first time seeing Wonder Woman being Wonder Woman, and shit is still badass. The whole action scene is pretty nuts. The speed ramps are used effectively, and when she breaks a rifle with her back, that shit is so cold. Although I will say, and this goes for most of the film, but the CGI can be pretty whack at times. I'm talking late 2010s, early 2020s MCU level CGI whack. By this point, I tried to ignore it because, like I said before, the Steve and Diana stuff is just so good. Like when he teaches her how to dance. Bye. So let's talk about the shittiest part of this movie, and it's the final act and Ares. It's so hard to tell what they wanted Ares to be and what he was meant to symbolize in terms of the movie's themes. So in the release version, Sir Patrick is revealed to be Ares, and he's like, I never make the humans go to war. I just give formulas and ideas, and they choose to make those decisions. But after this big horrendous CGI fight with mustache Ares, everyone stops fighting and they're all live, laugh, love. What? I've tried to make sense of this online. Some people justify it by saying that these soldiers were really happy that they survived the supernatural god battle. Some say that these soldiers are happy because the gas plane exploded and that means the war's over. Either way, if people have to justify themselves like this to make sense of a big payoff in the movie, something's gone wrong. Steve's death hits pretty hard, especially how they linger on him right before he sacrifices himself. And also this line,
I could save today, you could save the world.
that line only works so well because this story is set 100 years in the past. It's such a small sentence, but so grand in scale. But enough of that, what was the original ending before studio interference? So we have two sources of information. One is a Twitter user who allegedly went to an early test screening of the movie, and one is Patty Jenkins, the director of the movie herself. So in regards to the special effects in the third act of the movie, Patty Jenkins said that was the only thing that the studio forced my hand on. It was not supposed to be like that. It was supposed to be like, he never turns into Ares. The whole point of the movie was that you get there to the big monster and he's just standing there looking at you and says, I didn't do anything. And then the studio kept saying, okay, we'll let you do that and then we'll see. And then I could feel them creeping up, and at the last minute they were like, you know what? We want Ares to show up. And I was like, God damn it, we don't have time to do that now. Nope, you gotta do it. And it just pisses me off now because sometimes I read reviews and the only thing that gets unanimously criticized are those and pyrotechnics. They would have a big fight because he's a god, he can do anything, she can't hurt him. He didn't need the armor. So it's clear that the Ares look we got in the final film wasn't something that was planned from the start, and explains why he looks so dodgy, and Jenkins would have just had Lupin fight as himself. I don't think I would have been able to take that seriously, but I do get the impossible to defeat a god because he's a god thing. However, the guy who allegedly saw the early version of the movie said the Diana vs Ares fight was almost the same as Zod vs Superman. You can feel the powerful punches, impact, and the god's destruction. But when Ares gets defeated, he turns into a giant thunderstorm cloud and promises to be Diana's nightmare forever. Okay, we've had a bad history of turning godlike beings into thunderstorm clouds in superhero movies, but I think what this guy was trying to describe would have been more similar to this concept art. Honestly, this makes sense to me because while I was watching this movie this time, I was just thinking, why didn't they just make Ares into a big fuck off guy because he's a god? Have some God of War type shit, I don't know, just make the battle a bit more interesting. Still not clear whether this version would have had the same payoff for the soldiers all turning happy after Ares is defeated, because this ending would make no sense if you consider the fact that World War II was coming into fruition in a couple decades and it would be worse than World War I. Also, in this early version, Steve doesn't sacrifice himself, he gets shot down by the Germans. On one hand, I can see why they would have written this in for Diana's development. It would have made her mercy move and her belief in humanity more visibly persevering. But on the other hand, I think Steve's sacrifice and his character as a whole encapsulates the good of mankind, which is what Diana learns about throughout this entire film. But when all is said and done on this third act, the CGI was shit, the writing was unbearably corny, and the overall look of it was pretty ugly. The first two acts of this movie though, so good, man, so good. I feel like a lot of people have forgotten how much heart this movie has. Again, Gal Gadot's acting isn't great at times, but I enjoyed the movie.
I am Aquaman.
Okay, so I know Justice League was released before this, but I think we can all agree that Justice League and the Snyder Cut deserve their own dedicated video. Eventually. So Aquaman, the only film in the DCEU franchise to gross more than $1 billion. That's pretty sad. Imagine telling someone 20 years ago that an Aquaman movie will make more money than the first time Batman and Superman interact on screen in a movie, let alone a Justice League movie. This movie made $291 million in China alone, and just for reference, Thunderbolts made $382 million globally in its entire run. Yeah, you can see why Hollywood likes to suck up to China. In the US, this movie apparently had more female audiences than usual, with more mums watching this movie than dads, and to be honest, I get it. Game of Thrones hype was still there, so Jason Momoa still had his thighs wrapped around the world, and plus, no real competitor because there was no Star Wars movie that year. So when Zack Snyder cast Jason Momoa as Aquaman, there was clearly a goal to change the public perception of the Aquaman character. Some of you watching this video might be too young to remember this, but Aquaman used to be clowned heavy by everyone, like zero respect from general audiences. He was known as the boring dude who rides a seahorse and talks to fishes, and he'll be the butt of every superhero joke. So did it work? Did this casting change the perception of Aquaman? I'd say yes. If you ask anyone who's not really into nerdy shit to picture Aquaman, I feel like they're more likely to point to the badass Jason Momoa version, unless they're really old. Even if you Google Aquaman, most of the images will be Jason Momoa, but if you Google someone like Batman or The Flash, it's gonna be 50-50 media adaptations and comic book images. So anyway, one thing that's pretty noticeable about this movie is the amount of underwater CGI scenes. Apparently really hard to film underwater, obviously, and they had to make a new software to render all the independent hair follicles floating in the water. Some of the CGI though looks pretty uncanny, and you can suddenly tell why Avatar: Way of Water took so long to make. Although with that much CGI, it's nice that they balance it out with grounded action scenes throughout the movie. The opening fight scene with Atlanta, that's a one take but not really a one take. Pretty fucking cool. The scene in Italy where Black Manta fights Aquaman and Atlanteans chase Mera, dude, so good. It's also so brave of them to set this in broad daylight and it looks so nice. Like, how often do we get a good action scene in a superhero movie with a sunny background? And it looks this good. The sweeping one-ers are awesome, and I love the stunt work in here where you can just tell that they're busting through real walls. Like, you just can't replicate that feeling through CGI. And at the end of this fight, I feel like Black Manta definitely should have died from that fall. I mean, come on, he's still human. Speaking of Black Manta, love the suit, love the all black, and I think a lot of fans have trouble deciding on whether this suit is better than the sequel version, even though the sequel version is more comic accurate. They both look cool. Yahya Abdul-Mateen II is great with what he's given. I don't know how they expected him to be half a villain in this movie and expect him to be the main villain in the sequel. Have we ever had that before in a superhero franchise? I don't know how they expected that to work. Patrick Wilson, who's 6 years older than Jason Momoa, plays Aquaman's younger brother, Orm, aka Ocean Master. I remember thinking that he looked a bit old when I first saw this in theaters, but nothing too strange. The only thing strange about this is that bro literally looks like a comic book Aquaman, which I guess helps with the story's themes in a meta way. And also, James Wan has already worked with Patrick Wilson through the Conjuring films and stuff, and if Zack Snyder never casted Jason Momoa, maybe he could have been the actual Aquaman for the DCEU. We'll never know. Great Orm, regardless. He plays that character beautifully. One of the downfalls of this movie is the script. So many corny action lines we've already heard a million times.
Permission to come aboard. I don't suppose you want to talk about this, do you?
You waiting for an invitation? Get in!
And so many moments interrupted by an explosion a million times.
His loyalty is to the start.
To me, this movie is not something you rewatch. You watch it once and have fun with it and just let it lay dormant in your mind for the rest of your life. And dare I say it, at least Suicide Squad was bad enough to keep me entertained. This time, when I was watching this movie, I just kept mentally groaning and rolling my eyes. Everything to do with young Arthur Curry in this movie just sucks, okay? Like, the bullying scene is written like a parody of a bullying scene. And teenage Arthur Curry. Do I even have to say anything? Are you saying they executed her? Because she had me? I'm gonna give the benefit of the doubt here and say that this was a second unit shoot where James Wan wasn't present to direct. Okay, but let's go back to some more good stuff of the movie. The trench sequence, fucking epic. I remember seeing that in the theaters for the first time. Oh my god. Would that trench movie have made any money if it wasn't cancelled? Who knows, but if James Wan returned to direct that, it probably would have been a banger. The final battle is ridiculous, and ridiculous for all the right reasons. I mean, you got Julie Andrews voicing a Kraken, basically. You can't get more lit than that. Aquaman's final suit still looks fucking gorgeous. The slow motion and still shots in Arthur and Orm's final fight, just pure aura farming. I don't know how else to put it. When slow motion is used sparingly like this, it literally looks like a comic book splash page. How do you get better than this? So yeah, I don't know. This movie is a mixed bag. I guess it's worth watching at least once, but I think I'll be okay if I never have to rewatch this film ever again in my entire life. And as I mentioned before, the next in this series will have to be the Justice League and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Not excited to spend 6 hours of my free time watching those two back to back, but I guess that will have to happen eventually. And if you haven't seen the first part to my coverage of the DCEU, I did cover Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, so you can check that out if you haven't already. I was not kind to those movies, and I stand by those criticisms, okay? And I'll see you next week. See you.
915 in the open night. I can't help that I feel so lonely. How many times do I have